This is my toddler. He's crazy and really rough on things, so when it was time to pass his bed down to his baby brother, we knew his replacement had to be A, really strong, and B, have room for all his little odds and ends that just seemed to keep multiplying. Naturally, we couldn't find anything that we really liked online, so we're just going to make one ourselves. Let's get building. Step 1 of this project was to select the material we wanted to use for the bed and cut it down to size. For the head and footboards, I used pre-made project panels from my local big box store. For the pieces I needed, it was cheaper to grab 2 of those as compared to a sheet of plywood. I did have just enough 3/4 inch plywood left over from a previous build, so I opted to use that for the long sides. You could also use MDF here, but the stuff is super heavy and just doesn't hold up as well as solid wood. Also, you don't need a table saw or a track saw to cut these down. A circular saw combined with any long, straight edge can make cuts precise enough for this. The main frame consists of a headboard, footboard, and 2 side panels, with space for 3 drawers, which we'll make later. The assembly of the frame was done with wood glue and pocket screws, which is the bread and butter of furniture making. A basic pocket hole jig can be had for $20 or $30 and prevents your build from ending up looking like this. I'm sure there was a way to use math to figure out exactly where these dividers should have gone, but I just moved them around until the gaps were all even, and then marked them so they ended up back in the right spot after applying glue. These corner clamps made putting the rest of the frame together a cinch. It's great to have a spare set of hands when you're trying to hold bulky things together. Since we're adding drawers to this bed, we need somewhere to attach the glides. I'm adding these cross braces to do just that. It's important here that the braces are as perpendicular to the openings as they can be to prevent binding as the drawers slide in and out. I'm using a speed square to help check the alignment before securing them in. Also, by placing 2 scrap pieces that are identical in height under each end, I ensure that each brace is placed at exactly the same height. This will give me an even frame of reference across the whole bed when it comes time to install the glides. After completing the main part of the bed, I put together a simple frame that would support the mattress. I'm going to be laying a solid piece of plywood over this, so the slats don't need to be too close together. You can get by without having to put a board on top by using a bunch of slats, usually no more than 3 inches apart, but I'm trying to plan for the eventual toy that makes it out of the drawer and ends up trapped under the bed. Simply lifting up a board and being able to access the space seems like an easier prospect than trying to fish something out between narrow slats. By recessing the support frame down into the main frame, we are left with a nice little lip all the way around the edge that will keep the mattress from sliding off in the event of any spontaneous high-intensity toddler situations. I did have a bit of scrap left over, so I decided to throw in some blocking support for the slats to keep them from bowing or twisting. This actually came in handy later on for something else. After cutting the bottom and the sides for the drawers, I assembled them using nothing but glue and brad nails. I don't feel the need to use some fancy dovetail or complex joint. This way will be plenty strong for what it will be used for. You can easily customize the height and the depth of the drawers depending on what you want them for, but the width needs to be exactly 1 inch smaller than its corresponding opening for the bed frame to account for the thickness of the glides, which are a 1/2 inch each. I'm going for an inset drawer here, which means the face of the drawer will sit flush with the side of the bed. For this type of drawer, you'll need to align the front edge of the glide with the rear edge of the opening. This will leave just enough room to attach the face panel to the front of the drawer box. Using a scrap piece of wood placed on the bottom edge of the opening provides some clearance which prevents the box from rubbing against the frame as it opens and closes. After the boxes went in, I used a scrap piece of 3/4 to make sure the faces will sit flush when they're installed. The glides may be adjusted slightly in the event that a face sits a little proud or recessed. Each face was cut to fit its opening, with the goal of leaving a 1/16 inch of a gap all the way around. This is done by measuring the opening and then subtracting 1/8 of an inch from the total width and height. When you're fitting the face, you can stuff playing cards all around the drawer to keep the gaps even, and then come from the backside to secure it with screws. I love this trick, and it just goes to show sometimes making things work with what you have is always an option. Since the top edges of the bed are going to be exposed, and my toddler loves finding corners with his head, I wanted to dull them down just a bit. Instead of sanding or routing, I added some rounded trim in the same thickness as the sides. Once that was on, I gave the whole thing a good sand to take care of any potential splinters. I had a bit of a dilemma with the staining process. Plywood's not a great candidate for dark stain as it tends to take it in unevenly. Sure enough, it came out pretty blotchy, and some wood conditioner may have helped here, but in the end, I decided to hit it with some sandpaper to intentionally give it a weathered look, kind of like one of those, yeah, I meant to do that things. Of course, you can choose to paint it or stain it to match any space. Once that was done, I finished off with some polycrylic and at least had some help cleaning up. Big thanks to the folks over at True Position Tools for sending me their cabinet hardware jig to try out. You can definitely measure out the center by hand, but this thing allows you to get consistent, repeatable results every time. I took some cheap adjustable feet and attached them to some leftover scrap to create a few support legs to go down the middle. This is probably overkill for a toddler, but I'd like for this to be able to handle anyone who might use it down the road. After throwing in a piece of 1/4-inch ply and giving it a little integrity test, it was time to move it to the kids' room. We've had some time to live with it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. My toddler loves filling and emptying the drawers, and I enjoy how nothing can get under there and get lost amongst the dust bunnies. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I really had a good time building this one and learned a lot of new stuff along the way. I'm going to be putting a list of tools and materials in the description, as well as a link to our website where we have a text version of this build, so you can follow along there. Until the next one, we'll see you then.